Just Terry. And yes, that's why the dogs are going crazy, but that happens so much. I never know.
Hi, Cal. I saw Lori for a second there. Hi, Lori.
Hi. So yeah, I too, regarding what Terry said about the snack, I appreciate you guys providing dinner for me tonight.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
what it is. The whole
Yes,
box.
yes, I will say thank you also, and my dentist will appreciate it. Hey, Dan Voss, did you send me something by email?
No, I think that's a spam.
Okay,
We got a Dan Johnson sent something out saying that it's a spam thing.
got it.
Thanks,
Okay. It looks suspicious, but anyhow. Well, we're live on YouTube now,
Yes.
and we have everybody. So why don't we call to order, if we're all ready, the regular board meeting of the Park District of Highland Park on Tuesday, December 15, 2020 at 6:01 p.m. Roxanne, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Bernstein,
Here.
Commissioner Grossberg,
Here.
Commissioner Flor Swicekoff,
Here.
Vice President Kaplan,
Here.
President Ruttenberg.
I'm here also. Thank you, everybody. Let me ask, are there any additions that commissioners or the staff would like to make to the agenda? Not having anybody yell out, we'll assume there aren't. Executive Director Romes, has anyone from the public submitted any email to be read aloud for the public comment period?
Yep, we have one, and I'll read it now. It's from Alan Sohn, 1789 Old Briar Road in Highland Park. And he says, I'm a 41-year-old resident of Highland Park. I would like to express my opposition to changing the configuration and number of courts at Sunset Park. I'm a member of a group that fully utilizes these courts on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday every week. We would not be able to continue our group if these changes were made. There are many other options for pickleball and volleyball elsewhere in the Highland Park District system. While the condition of these courts could be improved, I do not believe any change in the number of courts should be on the agenda. Please read this meeting at the park board. So thank you for your consideration, he says.
Brian, I'm sorry, excuse me. Brian, who was that?
It's Alan. Last name is Sohn. Son.
I'm just wondering if it was one of these guys that I was, one of these gentlemen that I was playing with a few years ago there that has a group there, but I can't remember. But I'm going to look and see if it's the same guys.
All right. Well, anyhow, we appreciate the comments, and obviously we'll take it into consideration. We've got a lot to consider about Sunset Park. Let's now move to the consent agenda. Brian, are there any preliminary comments you'd like to make?
Yeah, I just want to comment on two of the items. The first, the North Shore Yacht Club agreement. Just want to note that there is a 4% increase in from the budgeted fee from 2020, which was $6,500. So now it's $6,800. They did prorated amount this year, so it was a little less due to COVID. But the only other difference in that agreement, which was in the memo, is that we are no longer doing maintenance cleaning down at that facility. They are going to contract somebody out. So we are removing that fee that we charge them to clean the building, and they will use a third party. The only other comment I just wanted to make was regarding the affiliate and sponsored groups. While we very much appreciate the services they provide to the community, for our sponsored groups, we are not budgeting for financial contribution this year. And we've spoken with all of our sponsor groups, and they certainly understand the situation. And so we will rediscuss that in 2022. So that's the only comments I wanted to make regarding consent agenda items. You're on mute still, Barney, sorry.
No wonder we're moving along so quickly. All right, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
All right, Roxanne, would you please call the roll?
Commissioner Bernstein,
Aye.
Commissioner Grossberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Flor Swicekoff,
Aye.
Vice President Kaplan,
Yes.
President Ruttenberg.
Yes, as well. The motion is carried. We will now go to the treasurer's report. Director Peters.
Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone. And let me get my screen up. Okay. All right. And I think that looks like it's in presentation mode. Perfect. Okay. Good evening. So before us, we have our updated financial forecast due to COVID-19, our monthly update on how things are looking. We have our standard special disclaimer that we have each month as well. And then we have our projected cash flows, which we show each month from operations. And we had originally budgeted for our end of year cash on hand to be just under $12 million. And we're looking at it to be roughly $12.6 million. And so that is definitely good news. And it also is in compliance with our 25% board policy reserve, which is roughly $4.7 million. So things are looking good there. Next, we're going to look at our operations chart, which I think we're all very familiar with at this point. And so I do want to first point out just the amazing job that has been happening really here at the Park District. If you recall our original budget, we were budgeting a surplus of roughly $3 million. And originally we had budgeted revenues of $21.74 million. And we are looking quite well. In fact, if we look at where we are expense-wise, we originally budgeted $18.5 million. And we are right now projecting to end the year at about $13.5 million. So that is a $5 million difference in expenses. And that is really due to a great job of controlling expenses throughout the year. And we want to say roughly half of that $5 million savings in expenses is due to payroll, which we will look at more specifically in a couple more slides. But that was $2.5 million of our expense savings. And then the other half was really due to things such as reduced services and program expenses. We did a lot of our maintenance in-house this past year. Of course, we had significant savings on utilities and things that come with the closing of buildings and cessation of operations. And so our expenses, budget versus projected, are looking wonderful, as well as our revenue. Again, our revenue is really exceeding our projections, as you can see here. And that is that over $1 million excess or surplus of revenue of our projections at year end versus where we had projected with our COVID return at around Thanksgiving. If you keep in mind, we had a couple of areas that did exceptionally well this year. We had Sunset Valley, which came in at over $700,000 over projections. We had golf learning at almost $200,000. We had indoor and outdoor tennis, Park Avenue, Rosewood, Centennial Athletics, all that did really well during the year. We do want to point out to you as well this evening, while we budgeted an initial surplus of $3 million, we are now projecting with, just really 2 weeks or so to the end of the year, that our surplus is going to come in at $2.9 million. And so given the year that we had with, so much out of our control, at the end of the day, our difference of our year-end estimate, the $2.9 million versus our original budget surplus of $3 million, we are expecting to just come in shy of that of $137,000. So it's really good news for the park district. And so basically, I just want to say on this slide, in conclusion, our surplus is only $138,000 less than originally planned. Staff has learned how to react to COVID by developing community acceptable forms of recreation while keeping focused on district expenses and keeping those under control. And that's all I really have to say on the slide this evening, unless anyone has any questions.
I do, unless President Ruttenberg wants to go around the horn.
Well, let's start with Terry Grossberg.
Thank you. My question is actually more for Brian and staff. So breaking that down, the whys, why did we come up above projections? What were our strengths? What have we as a district learned about ourselves and the offerings that came in strong? And are we thinking that this is kind of a one-off because of COVID, or do we think that this could be the start of a trend where tennis and the beach is, sorry, I just got a message, where some of these outdoor activities are coming in strong? Are we, just what have we learned?
Yeah, sure. Well, what I will say is that we were extremely fortunate with the warm weather. The weather cooperated. It was dry and warm this summer and this fall. So that helped tremendously with the golf course. I mean, we certainly had high hopes for our golf course this year, but we never would have projected over $700,000 in net revenue. So that was an unexpected change that was for the better. Certainly a lot we learned at Rosewood and a lot of our parks, our lakefront parks and beaches with the access control challenges that we had that we will address next summer and be ready for. We weren't really ready for those this year. So we'll be much more prepared, assuming that people will still value outdoor recreation. And I think our lakefront will continue to be actively used, certainly not to the extent of last year, assuming that the Chicago lakefronts are open and people are able to go to ball games and things of that nature. But we certainly are going to be ready for some increased usage on the lakefront. And overall, this year was it's just one of those years, and everyone knows it. It was a trying year. It was challenging, and staff, really, I think, was tested on being adaptable, being able to quickly adapt, which was the name of the game this year. Being proactive on having different scenarios available. So when we look into our spring and summer programming, and we're going to do some presentations early part of the year, you'll see that we have some alternative options available based on the status of the environment. I think that the trend will continue at golf, we hope, but Northbrook Park District is opening their municipal course this summer, not until I think mid-June or late June, maybe even July. But I think some of this stuff will continue, and hopefully tennis. I know a lot of new tennis players, a lot of new golfers came out, so we're banking on that continuing. And hopefully we're going to recover from fitness as well. And I guess that's about as thorough of an answer I can give you on the spot.
Let me just jump in. I thought that was an excellent question, Terry. And Brian, off the top of your head, that was a very good answer. I would like to suggest that at a meeting, let's just say January, I don't know exactly when, that perhaps it would be a good idea to go through things that we've learned, as you've said, and what we can continue to implement with some specifics and other things that might flow out of that. I think this is a good time to sit, reflect on the changes that were made, not just the cost savings, but how we've generated programs, how we've taken the bull by the horns and moved ourselves forward.
Yep, absolutely. That's been pretty consistent with what our internal staff team has been this year. Is just, we got to think as creatively as we can and learn how to think big and adapt quickly. And so, yeah, we'd be happy to provide some report
That would
back.
be great. Let me just ask if anybody else, Cal, I'm sorry.
A quick follow-up,
Sure.
just to Brian. Brian, you said that the course made 700,000 this year?
A little over, yeah, we'll have a presentation from Ryan at the end, but yes.
What is a normal year
So
on average?
Yeah, well, pre-renovation, we typically broke even. That was a good year. Maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, we generated a net revenue, but in the past 10 years, it's been around a break even. And in our opening year, we generated, I want to say about 150, and I think we anticipated about 150 this year. And so it's well above what we would have expected.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Let me just follow through. Cal, do you have any questions at this point?
No, we spent a lot of time on these charts and graphs at the finance committee, so I had all my questions answered.
Okay, Lori?
No, I don't have any questions. It's pretty
Okay.
clear. Thank
Great.
you.
All right, back to the next slide, I guess.
Okay, very good. Okay, and then we are also quite familiar with looking at the recreation fund without taxes or transfers. Again, on this chart, we can see what our original budget was, which was a deficit of about $2.4 million. And then we had our, the dotted line was our projections that we had dropped in. And then you can see the dashed lines are our actual figures through the end of November. And then we have projected the dashed lines out through the end of the year. And so with the COVID, when we first started this, we were projecting to have a deficit of about $3.7 million. But we believe that at this point, end of year is going to end up at about $3.2 million. So but less of a deficit than what we had originally anticipated due to the COVID. If we look at this, we can see that our revenues are actually going to decrease a little bit from November to December, and that is due to having to refund some of the folks, their memberships or other programs that we did in fact have to cancel or that we had to shorten due to the recent closure at the recreation center, and then also some of the mitigation that was put into place. And then we do see that we have, we are slightly over budget on expenses in November, and we do expect that trajectory to continue through the end of the year. But, keep in mind, the bulk of this is going to be payroll. And we know that by tracking the payroll, which we'll look at in just a moment, that we did incur some extra payroll. But with that, I would say minimal amount of extra payroll, we generated a lot more revenue. And so this chart is really, I think we're all used to seeing it. I'm not sure that we would really have any questions on it, but overall our year-to-date net difference of our actual versus projected is about $950,000 different. So that's where we're looking in the rec fund. Do we have any questions on this chart? Or are we ready to look at payroll?
Let's go to payroll.
All right, so this is the same chart we've been looking at. And as we discussed with the opening graph, our overall results could have looked much worse without the significant reductions that we did make in payroll over the course of the year, which were achieved by furloughs and hiring and salary freezes. And by taking those actions, we did take our budget of roughly $10 million of payroll, and we reduced that to a projection of $7.5 million in payroll. So $2.5 million of savings, a little over $2.5 million in savings. Against our blue projection line, we have been tracking our actual payroll, which is the yellow. And so we can see as of the end of November, we are a little bit over that projection line by about $125,000. But again, given that our surplus is so significant overall, it takes some manpower to get us there. The other thing to look at down below, if we look at total payrolls, we know that July tends to be our biggest month anyway because of all of the summertime activities, plus July had 3 payrolls in it, but we can readily see that month over month payroll amounts have been coming down. And at this point, already having a December payroll under our belt and about to have another one, there will be 3 payrolls in December, but those are included in our blue projections. But given what we know right now, we know that this yellow actual payroll line will in fact end up less at year end than the $7.5 million in projection. So we are looking very good on the payroll front as well. Does anyone have any questions on this slide?
Assume not.
Okay, all right. Well, then we are going to move on from this presentation. But again, I know Kale often asks for a summary, but really, I think we are quite pleased with the way things have turned out, given all the obstacles we have faced this year. We are, proud of the expense cuts that we have made, and as well as all the various programs and services that we came up with to just kind of keep moving and making, encouraging people to come and still participate in our programs. And I think we've been pretty successful with that. So we will now move on to the rest of our treasurer's report. So we will, let's see, let me stop sharing this. Okay. So now, if in your board packet, we have our summaries of our 5 funds, our general corporate fund, which is favorable versus the budget, which was largely due to the reduced payroll we just discussed and reduced expenses due to closing and timing difference of health insurance, which will come into fruition in December. The special recreation fund, which we have spent a lot of time looking at the past couple of months with the tax levy. The contractual service payment for the NSSRA building was budgeted for June of this year, and we know that that is not going to take place until 2021. We also know that inclusion fees were nominal due to COVID-19, and also that the second member contribution amount will be paid in December, so that favorable variance will go down somewhat, but it will still be very positive at the end of the year. In the recreation fund, we are.
Hey, I'm sorry. Was there a slide we're supposed to be looking at?
There's not. This is just in your packet.
Okay. Okay.
So for recreation, we're showing an unfavorable variance from budget due to COVID-19 closures and reductions in services and programs offered at the Park District. Debt service, we do have budgeted tax receipts that are trending unfavorably due to timing differences and tax collection. The variance should continue to diminish. In fact, we know it will because we got a surprise tax payment in December. However, the final cash collection rate is going to be below budget due to our slower than usual payments because of the pandemic and the extension of the property tax deadline. If you recall, it was moved till November 8th. And so, in fact, almost $20,000 may need to be borrowed from our operating funds to pay the obligations. The bonds, the payments are actually due today, December 15th. And we are going to touch on this later, asking you to pass a resolution. But basically what has happened, because in a typical year, our tax collection rates come in at a little bit over 99%. We know they are slow and delayed this year. We were at 94% in November. We received a surprise unannounced payment in December, which brought us up to about a 96% collection rate. However, that still was not enough to pay our bonds today. And so we talked with legal counsel, and we are allowed to borrow money from our operating funds. And hopefully, we've also been informed by the county that we should be getting payments in January and February. We are hoping that they will be greater than $20,000 for debt service fund. If they are not, then that is when we would need to borrow money from the operating funds to make this fund whole until those monies are eventually collected. And then finally, the capital projects fund is significantly under budget as projects have been delayed or eliminated due to COVID-19. Does anyone have any questions on the treasurer's report?
I just have one comment.
Okay.
I just want to recognize and acknowledge, Mary Lynn, all your hard work with regard to this year. You know, you signed on for this job to be the treasurer of the district, and you didn't know what you were getting yourself into with COVID, and you know, and we've been pretty hard on you with regard to trying to get you to turn things around, both here at the board level and also at the finance committee, and you've never complained, and you're able to create the graphs that we saw earlier tonight that have made it much easier for us to digest what COVID is doing to the district and the impact it's having, and it's allowed us to plan better. So I just want to acknowledge you and all your staff's hard work. I know you didn't plan on this, but all your hard work has really helped us, and as you can see from the numbers that we saw tonight, that has created a lot of benefit to the district and to our constituents all around. So I want to thank you, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
That was great, Cal. Thank you. I think you've echoed the sentiments of all of us. But I would like to ask one question.
Of course.
It's consistent. The net effect of the lesser tax collection, it has an effect, but it's not a material effect on our financial condition. Am I correct in saying that?
That is true. So it is roughly $90,000 in the general fund. And then, I'm sorry, it's a $97,000 effect in the general fund, and it's a $91,000 effect in the recreation fund. In the debt service fund, it's about a $20,000 hit. And in special rec, it's about the same. It's about $30,000.
And despite that, because of our good financial position going into the year, we're still going to have a good financial position at the end of the year.
Absolutely. And the thing to remember about property taxes too, you know, we will get those someday. Hopefully we'll get the bulk of them in January or February, but eventually, you know, you will always get that money. It's just a matter of when does it come in, and then what year can you apply it to, because we can only apply money back to this year if it comes in before the audit's done.
I hear you. Okay, good. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Proceed.
Okay. Oh, I think you proceed first.
No, I was wondering, is there any, I was actually really asking, is there anything more that you wanted to mention to us?
No, I'm done. Thank you.
All right. But I think we now go to unfinished business, which is still you on the approval of ordinance 2020-05.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
So that's where I meant proceed.
Okay, I didn't know if you needed to announce it first. So, okay, as you recall, we have been discussing the tax levy for several months at this point. And on November 19th, 2020, the Park Board passed the Truth in Taxation Resolution for the 2020 tax levy, which will be our 2021 tax collection. By law, the Park District must wait for 20 days to officially pass the 2020 tax levy ordinance to formalize the estimated levy described in the resolution. In your board packet this evening is the levy ordinance, which exactly reflects the resolution that we originally looked at. Upon passage of the ordinance, staff will deliver an executed copy to Lake County so that it may be recorded by the legal deadline of the last Tuesday of the year, which this year happens to be December 29th. The 2020 tax levy ordinance represents the district's request for property taxes and reflects an increase of 0.00% from the 2019 property taxes collected during 2020 based on a CPI increase of 2.3% for those funds which are under the property tax cap, and a 0.0245% per $100 equalized assessed valuation, which is also an EAV, for the special recreation fund. This levy focuses on capturing new growth within the district. The levy request, exclusive of debt service, totals $11,743,050. So staff does request approval from the Park Board of Commissioners for Ordinance 2020-05, tax levy ordinance for 2020, representing the district's request for property taxes to be received in 2021. Again, the amount of that levy is $11,743,050 exclusive of debt service. Are there any questions?
Let's start with Cal. All right, we won't start with Cal. We'll start with Terry.
No questions.
No questions. This is, as long as this is lines up with everything we've been talking about over the past 2 months, that's exactly what I want. Yes.
Okay. Lori,
I agree. No questions either.
Brian?
No questions. Thank
All
you.
right. Is there a motion to approve ordinance 2020-05, tax levy ordinance for 2020, representing the district's request for property taxes to be received in 2021? The amount of the levy is.
Sorry.
Finish.
You paused too long.
I know. The amount of the levy is $11,743,050, exclusive of debt service. Is there a motion for this?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Great. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Roxanne, please call the roll.
Commissioner Bernstein,
Aye.
Commissioner Grossberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Flores Weiskopf,
Aye.
Vice President Kaplan,
Yep.
President Ruttenberg.
Yes, thank you. The motion carries. All right. Let's now keep you there. And we'll move to new business, which is the approval of resolution 2020-14 to amend the fiscal year 2020 operating budget and allow for an internal loan.
Yes, thank you. And if you recall, back on January 21st, 2020, the Park Board approved resolution 2020-01, and that was to amend the fiscal year 2020 operating budget. The amendment moved the $7.1 million of budgeted bond proceeds from the debt service fund to the capital projects fund. Recently, while we were preparing the Park District's 2021 budget, it did become apparent that the correlating bond issuance costs that were buried in the budget should have also been transferred at that time. So similar to resolution 2020-01, staff recommends that the Park Board of Commissioners ratify resolution 2020-14 to amend the fiscal year 2020 operating budget again to move the issuance costs from the debt service fund budget to the capital projects fund budget. After this resolution is executed, resolution 2020-14 should be filed in the permanent records of the district. Additionally, based on the conversations that we just had a couple minutes ago, due to the delayed receipt of tax revenues to the district, it may be necessary to loan funds to the debt service fund from the operating funds in order to ensure a positive fund balance at year end in the debt service fund. Staff requests that no more than an additional $8,000 from the general fund and no more than $12,000 from the recreation fund be allowed to be transferred as needed to ensure that we have a positive fund balance in the debt service fund on December 31st, 2020. The staff recommends approval from the Park Board of Commissioners to ratify resolution 2020-14, amending the fiscal year 2020 operating budget by moving the issuance costs from the debt service fund budget to the capital projects fund budget in the amount of $106,500. And additionally, staff recommends approval from the Park Board of Commissioners, an amount not to exceed $8,000 from the general fund and an amount not to exceed $12,000 from the recreation fund to be borrowed as needed to ensure a positive fund balance in the debt service fund at December 31st, 2020. Does anyone have any questions?
I just have one.
Yes.
With regard to these small transfers, I get there's some cleanup going on, and there's also the small transfers. Have you run this by our financial advisors? Is this going to any way impact our AAA bond rating?
It should not. And honestly, debt service funds are usually kept with a pretty minimal balance. So I would imagine this is happening in a lot of places besides us. But I have talked to the auditors as well as legal on this, and it sounds like we'll be fine. And sadly, it's not that strange of occurrence this year.
Okay.
right.
This is the first time I can remember this happening. Obviously, it's an extraordinary situation, but I guess we have no choice. So that's fine.
And I assume that amending the budget is just a confirmation of what we would do, have to do, and this is just the right way of doing it.
That's absolutely true, right? And that amendment too, we have also run past both legal and the auditors as well.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Now,
Actually,
yes,
no,
Terry?
actually, I was just, the question I was going to ask was, had we done that before? But Cal kind of answered that. If he hadn't heard of us having to do this before, then I guess we haven't had to do it before.
Extraordinary times, as Cal has said before. All right. Now, this is a rather long motion, Brian, so just wait. Is there a motion to ratify Resolution 2020-14, amending the fiscal year 2020 operating budget by moving the bond issuance costs budget amount from the debt service fund budget to the capital projects fund budget in the amount of $106,500? Additionally, we would approve an amount not to exceed $8,000 from the general fund and $12,000 from the recreation fund to be allowed to be borrowed as needed to ensure a positive fund balance in the debt service fund on December 31, 2020. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll approve it. I'll move to approve that.
Good. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Super. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, Roxanne, please call the roll.
Commissioner Bernstein,
Aye.
Commissioner Grossberg,
Yes.
Commissioner Flor Swicekoff,
Aye.
Vice President Kaplan,
Yes.
President Ruttenberg.
Yes, as well. The motion is carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
We will go to the Parks Foundation update. Terry.
Sorry. I did not prepare the Park Foundation update. I somehow missed that. I can find the notes from the previous meeting and do that. I'm embarrassed to say that, but
Well, let's just move on. No reason to be embarrassed.
I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. I was at the last meeting. The appeal, I could just give you a few things. The appeal hasn't quite had the bones behind it that we had hoped it would. So we're kind of scrambling to see how we can capture the heart of the Highland Park during these times where everybody needs something. I know that they are, and Brian, you can correct me if I'm wrong about this, but I think they voted to have a consultant, a person that focuses directly on I think mostly governmental bodies that have foundations to help them with a promise that they could really jumpstart the fundraising aspect of it. Brian Rome's.
Yeah. Yeah, no, in a nutshell, obviously these are volunteers who don't have a strong background in developing and implementing fundraising strategies and techniques. So this consultant would help develop that strategy a little bit more. And other foundations have had great success working with consultants to help them kind of get the ball rolling, if you will. So there's a expected good return on this investment, which is relatively small. And if there's any questions regarding that consultant or that process, we'd be happy to answer them. But I think it's a really positive move for them to approve that.
And just
ahead,
one
Terry.
last thing to add. They are trying to figure out a way to participate in the MLK Day. I'm once again involved with that, and I won't go into details, but it'll be a virtual event that will be highlighted on the city's website, and the foundation is looking for sort of an angle on what to do in front of this kind of captive audience we hope to get on January 18th.
Super. Good report, Terry. Thank you.
Barney, I have something on that, if I may.
Of course.
So Terry, I know that the foundation is always looking to grow. We have people that come in, serve for a while, do a nice job, and then move on to other things. I'm aware that Rob Steppen has been added to the foundation. I've had the privilege of working with him in the past in marketing, and he knows his stuff. So I think you're going to see a lot of good web presence online and just overall very bright and smart marketing and public relations. So I'm excited to see how his contribution helps the foundation grow.
Is he a member? Is he a Highland Park resident, or is he the consultant?
No, he's a Highland Park resident.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Good. Thank you, Lori. Brian Romes, we're going to the director's reports.
Yeah, we have a couple presentations tonight from staff. The first being from manager Ryan Oakes, who is going to give us the details of our great season over at Sunset Valley Golf Course.
And a promise that it will be duplicated next year, of course.
Of course. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to attempt to share my screen real quick. Can everybody see this?
Nope.
Nope.
Now we can.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to run through the end of the year golf report for the Learning Center and Sunset Valley. So if you have any questions, just ask myself, Cole Sangern, who's on the call, and also Rob Saunders, who's on the call at the end of the presentation. But we'll run through this fairly quick. We'll start with the Learning Center. This first chart just gives a utilization through the year for the mini golf and the driving range. As you can kind of tell, March, April, May, the driving range was closed for COVID. We were able to open on May 29th with limited capacity on the range. And then we opened further in June, July, August, and so on. And really, with the great weather we had, a lot of people came out to the range and mini golf this year. Full day golf academy. It was limited to just the 9 participants this year. We were hoping for more, but with COVID, we had to keep those numbers down. Our weekday PGA half-day camps actually did really, really well this year, and we're over budget than what we projected. Golf programs did okay. We had to cancel our spring programs due to COVID-19, and then the other programs this summer and fall did fairly well. Private golf lessons, as you can tell, Rob did a tremendous job with those, and a lot of people were introduced to golf this year. Overall, at the Golf Learning Center, we were able to reduce expenses by about $32,000, what we're going to project, as well as then approximately make an additional $65,000 from our projected revenue from what we projected. So overall, at this facility, we actually budgeted for a loss of $23,000, and we're actually going to have a surplus at the Learning Center of $76,000. So that kind of gives you the highlights at the Golf Learning Center, and then we'll go to Sunset Valley real quick, and we'll just give you a rundown on total rounds. These rounds are the actual numbers through November 30th. We're currently still open in December, so we'll probably do an extra 500 rounds in December, but through November 30th, we did 40,548 rounds. And with the average dollar per round was around $35.12. And we budget for 30,000 rounds with an average dollar per round of $34.48. And kind of how we break that down, that's how we do our budget. That's how we create our our operating expense budget. We go off that dollar per round, what's actually what we're getting when people actually come to the course to play. Here's our utilization of rounds per month at Sunset Valley. As you can tell, the blue is the actuals, and then the green is the projected. And to be fairly honest, June, July, and August, September, October, perfect weather. You couldn't ask for better weather in those months. All the rain came in May this year, and in May we were restricted to twosomes only every 15 minutes. So fantastic weather through the months. In our operational revenue and expenses, we're able to reduce expenses by about $65,000, $66,000. for 2020, and then we were able to generate an additional 490,000 from our projected revenue at Sunset. So, we had projected pre-COVID to have an operating surplus about 163,000, and we're actually going to have an operating surplus of $720,000. Any questions?
Let's just go around. Terry?
Just a couple quick ones. Well, were there any, this was our first full year, right?
Last year was our first full year.
Or not? Okay. Okay. So were there any maintenance issues? How did we handle staffing in terms of maintenance? And how did that affect the care of the golf course, and what does that mean going forward?
I don't think it really, we had to fill more divots. You have to fertilize more because you're getting more traffic from all the carts, all the wear, you get more ball marks on the greens. So we had to fertilize a little bit more to get them to recover a little bit quicker. Little things like that. But as far as maintenance, we have our plan in place we have a great staff. By the way, we have a great golf maintenance staff. And I give them all the credit in the world. We started a little bit earlier some mornings just to keep ahead of play. The first tee times were at 5:30 every morning, and just to keep ahead of play, it takes a little bit of time. So some mornings we start at 4:45 and or 5 a.m. just to get out ahead of play. But as far as maintenance, I think we were able to keep up with all the additional rounds.
So did we have a full crew, once we got humming? Did we have everything we would have normally had in terms of people?
Yeah, we did have a full crew. We didn't bring any of our, we brought one seasonal employee back, and the rest of our staff came from the parks. So Dan helped us out and gave us 4 parks crews for the months of May through September.
And just projecting forward, will you budget still? You'll obviously use what we did this year as a budget. What do you think you're going to be thinking about for next year? Are you going to aim for what we did this year?
No, I really think it really depends on weather, to be quite honest. It's hard. We're conservative with our budget in 2021. We kind of kept it like 2019 or 2020 previously. If the weather is great and we can capitalize on good weather and make more money than what we projected, that's always the goal. But I think we have a good base, a good structure to move forward with.
Thank you.
Lori?
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. I agree that we have a great staff there. I guess my question for the question I have is, you've started early. What has, the time change and making it darker go? Do you feel you lost golfers because it got darker earlier? Or how late did they play?
Well, they play till dark, but I'm just talking about, I should say, clarify, just in the summer months when it gets light early in the morning. Right now, we don't allow people, when it's this cold out, we don't allow people until the frost is kind of removed from the ground to play on the grass. So usually about 10 or 11, they can play now. And then once it gets dark, they're done.
So how does that impact our numbers once the daylight savings happens?
We don't really budget too much for when in the daylight saving months, like November, December, we're closed January, February, March. So we don't really budget a lot of our rounds for those months.
Okay.
That's just extra.
Good strategy. Okay, thank you.
Brian?
I don't have any questions, but I do want to commend Ryan, Cole, Rob, and the entire staff for the job they did. This was 1.5 to 2 times more than they planned for. With a limited staff due to COVID, I can tell you, I'm impressed with the numbers. I'm impressed with the way the course was kept. I'm impressed with the attitude of everybody there, even though it was swamped every day. Rob, if you're on the call, I don't know if you know, but you've been teaching my nephews golf. They now love golf. Kudos to all of you. I can't think of a better crew to run our golf facilities.
Amen.
Cal?
Yeah, I'd like to echo those comments. Again, Cole and Ryan and Rob and their entire staffs, they did just a tremendous job this summer. And again, you have to remember it's under really trying conditions. They're all wearing masks. They're dealing with the public in a very difficult environment. As you can see, we've had a lot of golfers through there, and there's a lot of things that were being juggled there, trying to make the facility safe for our public to use. And I just want to anecdotally basically mention three things that I've observed out there. Number one is the comments that I've received from many, many golfers is that despite how much play the course received this year, the course was in great shape. And they always said it was in great shape, and they always mentioned how great the greens were. And I think, Ryan, that goes a testament to you and your staff. The second thing, and this really goes to Cole, this both is a spring, I'm going to call it late spring, early summer phenomenon, and then the late summer phenomenon really pinpoints the amount of service and amount of care that was given by our staff to the facility and also to the public. The first is, as if you recall, I mean, it seems like ancient history, but when the carts were first starting to be used, we have our starters, the kids who are not allowed to carry bags, but what they were doing to disinfect every single cart out there to make the public feel safe to use either the push cart or the electric carts out there was extraordinary, because every time someone had to come in, each of those carts had to be sanitized so people would feel comfortable renting them again. So I want to acknowledge that. And the second is really a small thing, and I really noticed it this fall, because when things started turning a little bit more difficult with COVID this fall, and the doors needed to remain open at the facility. When the leaves were coming down, the leaves were blowing into the facility. And it was extraordinary how our staff, our desk staff, and everybody there was our starters, and everybody pitching in to take to sweep the leaves out of the facility. And just those little things really go a long way. And I think, I mean, the amount of rounds, the amount of play, the amount of success that we received at Sunset Valley, again, goes to the leadership that we've had with Ryan and Cole. And then with regards to the driving range and the Golf Learning Center, Rob, you did an extraordinary job, again, under very difficult situations with COVID. Every time I went by there and saw it was crowded, people were complimenting the conditions of the facility. So again, it was a perfect storm. We had perfect weather this year, but we also had a perfect staff. So thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you for the good compliments and good work, Cole and Ryan and the staff. Let's move to the lakefront report.
I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Thanks, Ryan. Yep, so Mitch Carr is going to lead out this presentation, so we'll turn it over to Director Carr.
Okay, let me also share my screen. Hopefully everyone can see that.
Yep.
Okay, great, thank you. So tonight we'll give a brief summary on lakefront seasonal operations for 2020 and the planning for 2021. As well as a preliminary plan for the Hidden Creek Aqua Park for 2021. Each area has just a few slides, and I'll plan to stop after each area for any board questions and comments. We'll start off with Rosewood Beach. So obviously the season did start with a delay, but due to the nice weather and our extended season, the actual total number of weeks we offered guarded swimming this season was equal to what we typically do in a season from Memorial Day to Labor Day, which is 15 weeks. With Hidden Creek closed this year, we did add guarded early morning lap swim. That isn't something typical that we do, but we did provide that this year. Our staff on a daily basis, we had a manager and supervisor there, our typical guard rotation of 4 each day, and ambassadors and parking access attendants who were primarily there to manage access control for the parking lots and also monitor the guests. Throughout the summer season, Phase 4 guidelines of Restore Illinois were in place, as we know. And for the comfort and safety of all of our staff and guests, we utilized a maximum capacity of 275 total guests at one time. Once that was, as we opened and that was implemented, in the first 15 days, 10 of those days, we did reach capacity. So at that time, I think certainly a testament to the staff and being adaptive to change. And I think that's certainly the summer theme for all areas in recreation and facilities. We switched to a required resident identification to access the beach over the 4th of July weekend. And we also instituted a non-resident seasonal pass requirement. That was a fee-based seasonal pass. In addition, we did add advanced security in the month of August when really capacity limits across all of our lakefront was being tested. And also when our regular ambassador staff were getting ready to go back to college. This next slide here shows a little bit a snapshot of revenue and how it differed from 19 to 20. Overall, revenue was up 19%. This was primarily due to that seasonal pass that we mentioned. So we did end up selling 445 of those non-resident seasonal passes. That did have an impact on our parking revenue as well as daily pass admission revenue. Obviously, daily passes were limited after the 4th of July. So that did have an impact. And then our parking revenue had 2 impacts. One was we did not allow for non-resident parking in the upper lot before noon. And then once we put the non-resident seasonal pass requirement in, that because of the numbers, it started to limit the number of parking passes sold per day. But overall, as I mentioned, up 19%. This slide is going to show the revenue that we just talked about, as well as comparison to the expenses compared to 2019, the budget, and the variance to budget. So as you can see here within revenue, we mentioned already the fees and charges. The other area of revenue was through miscellaneous income on violations. So our ambassadors and our security officers started to issue citations on August the 3rd. And for the remainder of the season, it did bring in an additional $3,800 of income. The expenses that you see here, the highlights really, the primary areas where we were over budget were in the park ambassador line and salary and wages, as well as in our lifeguard line item for salary and wages due to our early morning lap swim. Both of those things were not budgeted in the 2020 budget, and in contractual services over budget due to the security contract. So in totality, that brings us to an 88% overage on our budget for projected loss right now of $108,000 at Rosewood Beach. This next slide talks a little bit about the recommendations that we're looking at for next year. You can see on the left-hand side, this is just kind of a snapshot of the season summary that I went through and how it compares to right now, our preliminary plans for 2021. So the highlights to this is it's actually an earlier regular start season for us due to right now, District 112 is going to be going on break earlier than normal. So we do plan to open up the beach on a more regular season basis a couple weeks earlier and end on our normal August 22nd timeframe. And then the postseason would run the rest of the month of August through Labor Day. With Hidden Creek being planned to be open, we don't plan to have a guarded lap swim in the early morning. It would be back to the typical swim at your own risk before 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. For access control purposes, a seasonal lakefront parking sticker would be required for residents, not only at Rosewood, but when we talk about other locations, lakefront locations, it would be a requirement too. This is due primarily to the city discontinuing the city sticker, which was our previous way that we monitored access control for residents. Also, for access control and to even have a better understanding of total utilization during our swim season, we're recommending that residents would be required to secure a swimming beach pass, and that non-residents would also, like they did this past year, be required to secure one as well. As far as monitoring next year, we would have our daily parking attendants, as well as what we're calling access attendants. And those attendants would be those that are checking in people to the beach swimming area. And those would only be on weekends. And at this time, we don't plan for a security team. I think Brian had mentioned earlier, some of our rationale on that is while we do expect, if the weather is nice, of course, that our lakefront will be busy again, with the city of Chicago beaches reopening, pools reopening, we expect some of the volume to be less. So at this time, I can take any questions regarding Rosewood.
All right, why don't we start with Cal?
Sorry about that. I've never been much of a lakefront guy. I've told that many times. I probably spent more time at the beach this year than my entire life combined in Highland Park. And I sound like a broken record, but again, this was a very difficult situation down there. I'm a lap swimmer, so I was in the water early in the mornings, and Carrie and her entire staff was out there and doing a great job. And then as the days progressed, dealing with all the issues we had with COVID. Again, I'm sounding like a broken record. This is the third time I said it about part of our staff, but they did a tremendous job under extraordinary situations. So thank you very much.
Terry?
Well, what I was going to talk about was security. I go down, I'm mostly at Ravine and Park Avenue. But seeing a face down there, I was even confronted a couple of times, which was great. I just think it became really important to pay the salary of an official-looking person above and beyond our ambassadors, and I thought that really, it may not have paid dividends literally, it paid dividends in terms of safety and security down there. So yes, kudos. It got really, I know Brian Romes knows better than anybody, but it became really, really tough down there when you had everybody from all neighboring communities and stuff trying to get down there and use our beach. And then you had our own residents who pay taxes to get down there, couldn't get in right away. And, not a good situation. So I know we're very equipped for next year. So congratulations, kudos to everybody who made the summer a great one down at the beach.
All right, Lori.
Yeah, no, I agree with all the things that were said. And I think what's really exciting is that our beach has always, had received recognition from our local residents, but it's nice to see that others are learning what a beautiful space we have. So it's just nice that, whether they could get in or not on busy days, since we limit it to people who weren't residents, it's just nice to know that the reputation of our beach is getting around.
Brian Kaplan.
I don't have any questions. I just want to, same with the golf course, just kudos to the staff. What we forgot to mention is the grief the staff got, I'll put that nicely, from people who were turned away or shouldn't be there, people who were behaving improperly. They put up with that too when they didn't have to. And by all accounts, they put up with it professionally and well, and kudos to them, and everybody did a nice job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we will go to Park Avenue.
Yeah, Park Avenue is next. So similar highlights to Rosewood with regard to the delayed start. Yacht Club operated a shortened season as well. As we know, they do their sailing program, and their lessons were limited due to the social distancing COVID guidelines. We did extend our staff coverage like we did down at Rosewood until September the 27th. And the postseason did continue with limited monitoring from the end of September through the beginning of November. As of the 8th of November, the building has now been winterized and all of the equipment has now been stored away for the season, and winter storage pass holders are utilizing the site. And that's the group that's down there now. Ambassadors and attendants monitored access control to both the boating area as well as the north lot. This is certainly an area that received a lot more utilization than normal, the North Beach. That was certainly, I think, indicative of the fact that Rosewood had met capacity many days, and that we were getting a lot of non-resident utilization to our lakefront. Those ambassadors and attendants not only managed the access control, but managed the guidelines for COVID-19. Certainly the North Beach being challenging because it's a non-swimming beach. So managing social distancing, managing no swimming, managing no trespassing to our neighbors that are just north of the North Beach certainly presented many challenges. And similar to Rosewood, we did bring in advanced security solutions for additional support in the months of August and September. As far as the actual boating operation, here is a snapshot of the passes that were sold this year in comparison to 2019, as well as the revenue that is brought in. You'll see that our storage numbers did take a small hit here versus 2019, but our seasonal launch only, so not storing your boat, but just launching your boat, did increase quite significantly. The other areas to kind of highlight here is the facility seasonal decal. So you'll see that it was really the same numbers that were sold, but the revenue did increase. That was due to us increasing the fee so that we could help pay for some of the access control elements that were going to be needed to be added for the summer. In addition, violations did bring in a small amount of revenue. And this insurance reimbursement is due to the launch deck that was damaged, actually washed away in a storm early in 2020. That launch deck isn't necessarily vital to be able to launch. It is a nice amenity for launch. We don't plan to replace that deck until the lake levels go back down and it's safe to do so. Similar to what we did at Rosewood, here is the revenue versus expenses. And again, a similar theme with being wages and contractual services being over budget, primarily due to the ambassadors, as well as the security contract. As far as an expense savings, as you might recall, early in the season, it was determined that dredging would not be needed. So that was an expense that we did not incur the full expense on. And so that, along with the additional revenue, does bring the Park Avenue boating facility to essentially a budget neutral 2020 projection. Also similar to Rosewood, a quick snapshot of what the season next year looks like. The preseason, we would plan to start in the normal time frame at the end of April. And really the preseason is just opening up the building and allowing the boat pass holders to get down there and start setting up for the year. We put in the sand ramp as well as the launch dock right before Memorial Day weekend, and that leads us into our regular season, Memorial Day to Labor Day, and then a postseason, which would be similar to this past year, where boating is operating with more limited monitoring. We don't see any changes to the general access park gates at Park Avenue. We do see, again, the need for that access control element of a lakefront parking pass for both residents and non-residents in the north lot, and then the traditional Park Avenue season sticker to access the south lot. We would anticipate scheduling ambassadors on a daily basis during the regular season with floater coverage floater coverage in the evenings. And then we would have an attendant scheduled right now as part of our plan to check stickers at the bottom of the hill on the weekends. So with that, I can take any additional questions that anyone might have on Park Avenue.
All right, well, let's start with Cal.
This is a question / comment with regard to both Ravine and Park Avenue. And I'm not saying we should have this discussion tonight, but I think somewhere along the line, I'd like to have some type of presentation about how we're going to address swimming at those two locations. I went down there both beaches this summer. I know they're not set up for people going into the water, but it was, and again, it's an extraordinary year with the pools being closed. But I think sometime in the future, if we could talk about whether that's advisable and how do we address that. And the last thing I'll say is, I rode my bike down to both beaches this summer, and I'm getting old. That ride up the hill is getting really hard. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I think we're going to handle that, Cal, by a valet that will take bicycles up the hill. Terry?
Rickshaw.
I don't know if it seems like we're not going to address Ravine Beach in any significant way. So I just had a question, if I could just segue to that. About a week ago, I sent Brian Romes a picture of the erosion that's happening down on the beach level. And it was stunning to me. The fallen trees that are along the coastline now, and it's almost like a cave inside the bluff. That's about, I don't know, 300 yards north of Ravine Beach or so. So I don't know, was there any update about that?
Dan Voss, maybe I'll put you on the spot a little bit. I know you and some of your staff have been down to Millard Beach and seen some of the erosion down there. I don't know if you're able to give any updated comments. I know this is part of our study with the lakefront consulting that we're doing right now with Smith Group. But Dan, do you want to comment at all?
Yeah, sure. But what you just said, Brian, is exactly right with our planning department. We're working on the lakefront master plan. I was down there Monday, and it is very much the same as it was. It might be more apparent, Terry, because the lake levels have begun to go down where you couldn't even get to that point.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, so most of that slump from the bluff erosion had happened in April. So at this point, at least it's holding steady, but we're hoping to, like I said, include it in the master plan and seeing what our possibilities to do anything there in the future.
Yeah, obviously there's a lot of concern about the trees that line from the top of the park down to the beach area. And I just wonder what the future is. I know we already had to block off a lot of that area there, and you can't even get all the way, halfway down the coastline right now. So it's just it's Mother Nature. It's not like anybody's fault, but it's just devastating to see it there. I think I have something else, but I forgot. Maybe come back around to me.
All right, we'll come back. Lori?
I don't have anything.
Okay. Brian Kaplan?
It's a nice presentation, and I'm glad that we have the Park Avenue Working Group starting so we can start looking at another beachfront property that's not Rosewood.
Terry, do you recall what your question was?
I think it had more to do with Park Avenue.
Okay, well,
okay.
We'll catch up. We'll catch up. All right, thank you.
One more quick
Yes.
update on the water park, just to.
Yeah, this is just a quick update, just to update the board on where we're at with an operations plan in draft form. Obviously, with Hidden Creek, it was a facility that we were unable to open this past year. Certainly, a lot of uncertainty still in the air right now. A lot of promising things with vaccines. The thing that we're certainly not aware of right now is, will large gatherings be allowed next summer? And we all know that Hidden Creek thrives the most when we're able to have obviously large gatherings on a nice hot day. So with that being said, after carefully studying these phase 4 guidelines, talking to a few park districts that did try to operate this year, I think we do have a very good operational plan ready with phase 4 guidelines in place and ready to react to phase 5 if we are able to get there and what that might look like. So I'll just briefly go through that. I'll let you know that we have talked with some other districts. We're part of a survey of 25 districts on, what is your plan for 2021? And at this point, 15 of those 25, 60% are planning and budgeting for a phase 4 opening. There are 3 of them that are planning for normal operations, and the rest are not certain yet. With that being said, our operational season wouldn't change regardless of the guidelines. We would still plan a Memorial Day to Labor Day season. That season would include a lot of our traditional elements, lap swim, our open swim times, our camp open swim and camp learn to swim programs. All of those can really take place within the guidelines. The biggest thing is obviously the capacity limits. So at our facility, being able to zone out our facility, we could accommodate 100 bathers with reservations required in order to manage the capacities. When I say zones, I mean 2 zones. And so with the guidelines by IDPH, we could effectively put 50 people in each zone. Because by the IDPH guidelines, we can do groups of 50 as long as there's 30-foot barriers between, and that zone can accommodate that group of 50. And these zones are very large, as you can see. The way we would structure it and try to encourage people to sign up for the zone would be, if you are a family with young children or less experienced swimmers, you would sign up for zone 1, because this includes our shallower waters, the kiddie slide and the splash pad, where our more experienced swimmers would sign up for zone 2 in the deep water well, the drop slide, the diving board, and our 2 feature slides. Now, this would be during our general open swim time is when this plan would go into effect. Because of that, as of right now, we are not planning to offer full membership pass sales. Parks that opened this year under these guidelines also did the same, basically because you can't guarantee access, and we would want to prevent the refunds that would come from people that would be disgruntled if they bought a membership and couldn't access on a regular basis. So in lieu of that, what we would do is offer an open swim day pass and a 10-punch pass. And that 10-punch pass would allow for a 20% cost reduction versus the day pass. We are, though, looking at being able to offer a lap swim season pass. So lap swimmers wouldn't have to buy daily passes. We believe in the time frame that we have and the number of lap swimmers we typically get, that we could manage that through a membership and also day pass type system. As far as marketing goes, the spring brochure, we usually do obviously a big call out for Hidden Creek. We do an early bird pass sale. At this time, our spring brochure plan is a 1-page call out that Hidden Creek will open and the dates that it will be open, but with no mention specifically to a membership or a pass sale. We leave that more for the summer brochure. That the summer brochure typically comes out the last week of April. So between the summer brochure and potential other marketing opportunities, if phase 5 is either in place by April 1st or it's really imminent, and we know that when we open on Memorial Day, we would be in phase 5, we could turn on, or I should say offer membership. That April 1st is really that date that we'd be looking at for being able to do that. If that isn't achieved and we're still in phase 4, we have options to offer mid-season and late season memberships if we interface later into the summer. We typically offer a late season membership in a regular year. So those are options that we could build in, and they just would be, reduced rate memberships based off of the number of days that they would be able to access. So that's a very short, brief operational plan update in the early phases for Hidden Creek. Happy to take any questions or comments.
Thank you. We'll start with Brian Kaplan.
No questions or comments. Thank you, Mitch.
Lori?
No questions or comments either.
All right. Terry
I'm good.
and Cal.
I've really missed Hidden Creek this summer, so let's hope for the best. I think these are the workable plans, and let's hope everything we're able to. Hope we're in level 5 and we can actually open the facility completely this year.
Great. Let's keep our fingers crossed. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have.
Great. Brian, is there anything else other than potential board comments that you want to raise?
I just had 2 final comments that I wanted to leave with regarding the director's report. One is for the board and for the community to keep their eyes and ears open tomorrow from 5 to 7, because you might just hear the sounds of Santa, Mrs. Claus, and the elves driving around Highland Park. We had to reschedule our polar parade. It was supposed to be on Saturday, but it rained on our parade. But they will be making a special visit to 26 families who have pre-registered to receive a gift, but open to all those to see and hear as they drive through the neighborhoods. Other than that, this is our last park board meeting that we have scheduled for 2020. So just want to acknowledge it's certainly been a very challenging and stressful year, and I think many of us are happy to put 2020 behind us. But as Terry mentioned and a couple board members mentioned, there was much to be learned from this year, and actually much to be grateful for and thankful for. And there were many successes throughout the year and things that we should celebrate. And as many board members mentioned tonight, that is certainly does not happen without a dedicated workforce, both full-time and part-time, who did a great job, but also does not happen without great board governance and collaboration between board and staff. So also want to thank the park board and just wish everybody a happy holiday and a happy new year. And
Well, great. Thank you. And I think we all feel very much the same. I did want to mention one thing. I don't know if anybody noticed, it's not quite on topic, that the city issued their update that I forgot what they call it. And it does provide information on a link to the Lake County Health Department that you can then register with them to be notified when you're eligible for the COVID vaccine. So.
Yep. And we're encouraging that as well.
Absolutely. Is there anything that any commissioners would like to bring up?
Well, I think Brian Rooms had brown hair when we hired him. Yeah.
Maybe I got some gray beard now too.
What I'd like to see is Jeff Smith for a moment to see how his beard is doing.
See progress?
Yeah, he doesn't have any much gray. If he's.
I'm not presenting tonight, so my camera's not turning on tonight.
All right. I don't believe there's any topic for closed session. And if there is no commissioner who has an issue they'd like to bring up in closed session.
Well, I just have one thing, Barney.
Yes, go ahead.
I mean, Lori usually gives a speech at the holiday party, and I don't know what's going on with the holiday party. So I figured give Lori the floor to give her speech right now, because again, we've talked about a lot of different facilities tonight. We haven't talked about Jeff or Liz or Dan or Chris with everything, the extraordinary effort they've put in this year, and Brian, yourself, what you've done under very difficult situations. So Lori, if you want to say anything, I guess we don't have a party this year, so the floor is yours.
Oh, well, thank you, Cal. That's really very nice, especially since this will be my last holiday party or non-holiday party as a Park District Commissioner. Just over the years, several years and even last year, we've added staff, lost staff. even had some important staff members pass away. So anytime we hear about that, have to look at the bright side too, and the happiness, Mitch and other people having babies, Amalia's growing up. It really is a very special Park District family. So, I mean, I just can't say enough about how much it's about the people. And I think we've seen that, especially with the pandemic and where we've had to cease programming, adjust it, whether it's online. Jody DiTomaso, for example, just an outstanding rec cheerleader. That's what I'd call her. She does a little of everything. But it's people like Jody and others who make our Park District what it is, regardless of whether it's in person or online. We just have a lot of different special people in every department. We're talking about finance, and we have registration, and then we have tennis over at Deer Creek, and we have the golf and rec center. I mean, just everyone. Heller, I can't forget Heller, and it's just a really special group. So thank you for all everyone has done to keep our Park District moving and chugging along, and really just keeping us active in people's lives, especially more than ever when we really saw at the pandemic that when you lose your freedom to go outside and do activities, it makes you appreciate it more. So I appreciate how we've done our best to keep everyone outdoors and healthy. So yeah, thank you so much. I will definitely miss everyone, but for now, again, we just, as a board, I know we all want to celebrate and thank you all for your tireless hours and just your dedication and passion for Park Districts as a whole.
Well, thank you. Thank
Barney,
you.
just one more thing I'd like to mention.
Yes, go ahead.
There's one department that we never really talk about, and it's kind of like an offensive lineman. You only notice it if there's a penalty or something goes wrong. And that really goes to Dan Johnson and the IT department. I mean, this has been a whole year where we've had to reinvent how we do our meetings, how the Park District operates, and a lot of it is done through what Dan has done through the IT department. So that's just a kudos to the offensive lineman there. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate everything.
All right.
Thank you, Cal.
All right. Well said, everybody, and thank you. Yeah. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Happy holidays. Everyone have a good
Happy
holiday.
New Year!
At
Happy New Year.
7:27, we stand adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.